There is more red in this than I thought. When I heard magenta, I almost thought more purple.
I was thinking it was going to read more pinky too, but yes, the colors that they're picking are really neutral, kind of has enough purple and enough warm to be somewhere in the middle.
Feels like a grown-up color.
It does, it is.
Very sophisticated.
Mature.
Yeah. All right, for cheeks.
That was Studio 5 style and beauty contributor Megan Moore filling Brooke in on the Pantone Color of the Year on yesterday's show. And now that you've been officially introduced, let's move from beauty to design. Today, we are sharing all the lovely ways Viva Magenta can complement your home decor. Designer Amber Dunford is here, and she's going to share her expert advice. And some years, you know, Pantone picks a color that we're like, oh, I have tons of that already. Fabulous. Yeah. I'll just highlight it more. What about this one? Does it go easily? It seems like it might be a little complicated.
It's a bold color, and it's really vibrant, and it actually has a lot of red in it. And so psychologically, it can kind of give us like a boost of energy. It's a little more like red is associated with things like passion and power, so it can kind of like give us that energy to like take action. It also has a little bit of violet undertones, and so it kind of balances that out with a little more of that soothing, kind of like cooperative nature that violet sometimes has.
Yeah, because you're really into like color and emotion, how that makes us feel. So you're saying this is a little like both.
You get a little bit of both. They kind of describe it too as like nature-based, but also future-based. So they said kind of see the duality in it as well.
Okay, so let's talk about those things. Let's start with nature-based, because you say that there are some ways we can incorporate this into our home, and some of those have a just totally different look. So that color to me, besides like a bright flower, doesn't scream nature.
I thought the same thing, and then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, well, you do see it in like exotic flowers and those like iridescent beetles, and so I kind of lean into that, thinking about creating a mood board or a style that was nature-based. When I'm working with these really bold colors, I actually like to do a lot of like neutrals to anchor them to sort of offset the vibrancy of the color.
Yeah, that's what I'm noticing on your little mood board there. So you had, tell us about some of those neutrals that you thought paired with it. I saw another shade of kind of like a rose.
Yeah, and I think picking up on that hue in more subtle, chalkier ways throughout the space. So I would anchor your space with like a neutral sofa, neutral like side tables, maybe bring in some of those organic shapes that are found in nature. Wood, your case goods could be like wood, and then maybe having fun with your rug, maybe like getting away from the traditional square or rectangle and going with the more like curved shape rug or some organic materials in there.
And so that to me was a little like what you were talking about before, a little more calming, because the color isn't like super prominent.
Neutrals inherently are going to feel more calming in a space, and then also studies have found that curved furniture and things with like some nature-based like imperfections in their shape are actually soothing to humans, and so we feel a lot more calm around curves.
My couches are curved. Maybe that's why I'm so calm. All right, so let's talk about if we want to go bolder. So you said there was the first one, and then this one is futuristic.
This one's a little more leaning into the future sort of techie side of the color. If you do want to do that, you could play with going like maybe in the other one, it's your side chair, but maybe you're someone who's like really not afraid of color and loves this and wants to do it on a sofa. And so if you're gonna do that, I would really anchor your space with blacks and whites to kind of give it that feel of modernity, and go with like slick slick materials and a little more like geometry with your structure and your shapes.
Yeah, I of course, everyone who walks in your house is gonna be like, oh my gosh, look at that sofa. So talk to me about these finishes. Would you say the futuristic, you're going to go a little more like chrome, a little shinier?
Exactly. I would get away from like the organic, like the woods and things like that, and I would go with slicker surfaces. So maybe it's marble or soapstone or glass or metals, like shined metals. That's going to give you a bit of that more future side.
And that, like I said, that sofa conversation piece. So in this case, you're saying you could use that color as a conversation piece.
I mean, anyone who's going to do this wants to talk about it. This is not someone who's like timid about color. This is someone who really wants it to be the conversation piece of their room.
And you mentioned that we need to be really thoughtful about adding things to a futuristic look. That's what you're talking about, like with the shiny and geometry.
Yeah, and I would be a little mindful when you're styling, like not to over accessorize it. So I wouldn't go too many tchotchkes. I wouldn't go too many like tabletop decor items. You really want to keep this kind of gallery feeling, and maybe this is for, you know, someone who has very well-behaved children or like, or no guests. Yeah, but this, I would pare those back a little bit and kind of use some restraint.
Okay, so you talked to us kind of about those two different things, neutrals and then bolder colors, but is there just like one color or two colors that you feel like are the best like colors to go with Viva Magenta?
Well, if you want to go with a more contrasting color scheme, then you could look at, like if you're looking at a color wheel, and opposite of that is going to be your greens. And so you could go with like a more emeraldy green, or you could, and that's going to create a little bit of vibrancy. And so when you go really high saturation paired with really high saturation, that's kind of energizing for people. Or you could lean into like the sagey, watery kind of mints, and that's going to be a little more soothing and calm.
Okay, it reminds me of like the preppy 80s, 90s when we wore like pink and green together a little bit.
A little bit.
So when you're looking at a cross and green as the complementary color, are there any colors that you're like, these do not go together?
Yeah, I would not pair this with red. It has so much red in the undertones already, even though I love these colors in fashion together, magenta and red. In a home setting, it's going to be a lot. We might have a little eye fatigue if you have too much red. Red does have some associations with cognitive functioning. It actually diminishes our cognitive functioning, so we don't perform as well around red, and it can just be a hard color to live with. So I would kind of get away from pairing it with that.
I agree. I didn't think of that, but when you said, I was like, yes, obviously we don't want to do
We all went through a red phase where we maybe painted a wall red. So
yeah. Okay, so you kind of showed us like a living room look, and most of those were living room looks. So is there a room in your home where you think this is where to put that color?
I really think it depends on how you pair it, right? So if you wanted to go with a more neutral based, I would do that in maybe your more like high traffic areas, your more livable areas like living rooms, family rooms. And if you wanted to go a little more moody and maybe romantic, maybe you're going with the jewel tones of like the emerald greens with the magenta in your bedroom.
Okay, thank you so much,
You're
Amber.
welcome.
That gives me some ideas and can get on that.